Hello guys and girls, how's it going? Screezilla here and I hope you're all well, and you join me today in a mod. Yes, a mod for the game. Now this is done by Sonda Kotori, and it's a mod of the Gepard, the Schnellboot, or the Flugkörper Schnellboot, and it basically gives us access to some of the things on the dev server at the moment. Basically SAMs and ASMs. Yes, air-to-surface missiles or anti-ship missiles. So, one thing we noticed when this was released is it did have these lovely exocet pods at the back of it. And, well, we knew that it would be coming. So, these are currently being tested, so they're nowhere near, and these aren't actual models, but it gives you an idea of what's to come, and what we will be getting. So, for instance, with the anti-ship missile, if we fire, say, at a big light cruiser over there, now you'll notice the missile goes nice and low and just skims the water. Basically this is what they do, is they skim the water so they're hard to detect. And as you can see, they're a huge amount of damage, but not an instant kill, which is good. We don't want instant kills to be a thing. And of course, you will be able to instant kill these things if you get the ammunition. So around about there, I think. If you get the ammunition sort of spot. But these missiles are designed to sort of fly across the water, as the French say, fish basically, skim across the water, be hard to detect, and hit ships. We're going to get them. But the big problem is countermeasures, and that's where it becomes problematic for getting these things in-game. Because without countermeasure, we're kind of in this weird position where if you don't have countermeasures, then you can't really have the weapon in-game. Now, wrong button. Wrong button indeed. Right, let's try and salvage this. Let's try and salvage this. It's good. It's still good. It's still good. It's still good. It's just a little airborne. I think we might have lost a missile. Yeah, very much wrong button there. Yeah. But what I did want to show was the SAMs. So, we're going to have to wait for these jets to turn a little bit because we need to get a heat signature on them, because they're kind of working off the model of the heat seekers. But without countermeasure, there's not much point in playing. So what countermeasures can we have? Well, there are a few different countermeasures. The two big countermeasures are the Kashtan and Phalanx, which are the how do you pronounce it? CWIS Gatling guns. So the Phalanx has a 20mm Vulcan, and the Kashtan has a, what is it? It's a 30mm. I can't remember the name of the gun, but it's a twin 30mm Gatling guns basically. And these things just fire out a load of lead and then take out the enemy ship. Alright, let's fire off a surface-to-air missile. Now these are done via our what do you call them? Depth charges. Might be out of range. But we'll see if we can get one. I think we're just out of range for those, or they're just not locking on quite well enough. So we'll wait for them to do another loop around. But yeah, having countermeasures is important, and for ships it will be important to have countermeasures. The unfortunate thing is, though, the majority of ships don't have these countermeasures. So for instance, this boat is I think it's about 3.0 or 3.7, something like that, maybe 4.0 at maximum. Right, so you're basically facing all of the light cruisers and all of the destroyers in the game. Now, pretty much all of the light cruisers didn't have any missile defense systems. They're all too old. They didn't get retrofitted, stuff like that. All of the fire for Sam again, see how well we go. Streaks up into the air. Looks like it might have got a lock. Didn't get a kill. One, as you see, just streaking up there. But yeah, not having any sort of countermeasures makes it quite hard to actually be something of use. And a lot of the ships we're going to have won't have any sort of form of countermeasures against these missiles. For instance, you know, Clemson class destroyer is not going to be able to defend against these missiles. It's just going to be an absolute slaughter. And you could say, well, it's not too bad. Look, they don't get many of these missiles, and that's it. You only get 4 missiles, but that's 4 ships that you will pretty much have a kill on, especially if you're fighting destroyers and stuff like that. You need to make them into a new class. You need to make them into a new BR. You need to make them into a new rank. You need to make it so they don't face each other. You need to make it so this is not facing early World War I, early World War II sort of era boats, because it's just an absolute slaughter, and it's just ridiculous that, you know, it's something that exists and is being used. So you have to make it so countermeasures appear first, rather than the opposite, which is, you know, make it so the game sort of, you know, you get these fun new toys in the game, but there's no countermeasures to stop them. Things that the ships could have is things like chaff and stuff like that. Of course, the ship can carry a lot of chaff launchers, so that does make a big difference. Just to launch massive salvo SAMs just for fun. Eventually we're going to hit a plane. It's going to happen eventually. But giving them that sort of ability to defend themselves is an important aspect, and it's something that is really, really needed. So things like electric countermeasures are there, of course. These ships had electronic countermeasures to try and jam the missiles, try and stop them coming in. We'll just restart as we're going along. And you can add the electronic countermeasures, but they're not they're not going to be an absolute winner. It's one of those things that really needs to be looked at and tested for a long time. You can't just have sort of these ships thrown in, you know, oh look, pre-order now and get yourself a Exocet missile. You know, we can't have that happen in the game, and if it does, it's going to kill the already struggling naval game, because naval is already struggling. It's very hard to get a match in there. You know, it isn't easy to get a game. It's not very enjoyable at the moment in some respects. invisible missile, I think. And that causes problems. And it's a real shame because... Actually, was that my... Yeah, that's the wrong launcher, isn't it? That's why it happened. There we go. Gotta remember they come from both sides. Okay, this one should be better. So, you know, it's already struggling, and if you added something like this, it's going to be pay to win. It's going to really kill the already struggling naval gameplay. When you can take out light cruisers with missiles, it's pretty much game over for naval, because that's really what happened to these giant ships, the cruisers and destroyers, the cruisers, the battleships. You know, that's why they disappeared, is because a boat like this could kill it easily, you know, with a couple of missiles from a long distance away, a distance where the enemy ship can't really find them. It sort of ruined the whole of the naval system. Because you've got things like jets and planes which can just, you know, launch these anti-ship missiles from a long distance from the air, and they're beyond the anti-aircraft ranges of most of the ships, you know, so it sort of makes the game sort of too unbalanced. It's really got to be looked at hard, and it's really got to be thought about, because if they just blunder in and just add missiles to, say, Germany and America, you know, anti-ship missiles to 2 countries only, and don't give any defences to any of the other countries, it's going to really end up costing the game. Let's just head back to the hangar here and just have a look at some of the ships that would be looking at facing the Gepard. You know, if we just have a quick look-see, so 4.0. So a 4.0 ship would have it, and that would mean that all the destroyers, all the cruisers would be, you know, pretty much facing it. In fact, the Colne wouldn't face the Gepard, you know, because it's a high BR, if it was played on its own, for instance. So you can see the problem. And then if we look at other nations' fleets, so let's look at Britain. So 4.0, it would be facing everything from the SGB to the, well, to Dido. And all of these ships would be easy pickings for sort of these missile systems, and none of these would really have any countermeasures. They don't have the countermeasures on them. The ships weren't fitted with them. Some of the tribal classes possibly, but I'm pretty sure they went out of action before missiles were really a big threat. There was the Henschel 293, of course, which they were fitted with the radio distorters. The jamming system used for it was can't think of a range for it, but there was a jamming system made for that, because it was a radio guided missile. Basically, it was the first missile, pretty much. You know, it was radio guided. It had rocket motors. It was a missile, an anti-ship missile, and that's it. But it did have the Royal Navy did end up making countermeasures for it, and they worked against it and the things like the Fritz X and stuff like that, because they used radio control rather than radar and stuff like that. But that's not a thing we're going to probably have to worry about. Maybe we will see it, and that would be kind of cool, but it's not a huge worry. The big problem with things like the more modern things like the Granets, the Exocets, all of the missiles that came in the sort of late 70s, early 80s, and pretty much all of, well, only the Germans and the Russians have ships capable of the missile systems sort of in their fleet, and that would be the pretty sure this late stage ship had a missile variant to it from very rough memory. Also, a couple of their destroyers may have some form of missile or system to them, just because the Russians did keep a few of these in service, especially with other nations like in the USSR, of course. So there'll be a very small handful of ships, but you look at America and its lineup, you know, the Asheville, for instance, it doesn't have any missile sections to it, but it does have the radar-guided guns on the front, you know, so that would be some form of defense in an idea, but it wouldn't work as well. And it just really, there's not enough ships to be able to justify getting these missiles and having them in game. SAMs, yes, if you get surface-to-air missiles on a few ships, that's fine, but we're going to have a much higher BR to get these missiles, because currently 4.0, it's just going to be one ship with exocets and everyone else doesn't have them. And as we've seen in with the absolute fuck up that is helicopters and their systems, you know, it just, you need to actually allow everybody the same parity, because otherwise games become extremely unbalanced. You know, I've had games where it's not as bad now, I guess, because Germany technically has helicopters, but you know, you don't really see many German helicopters out there. So when you're fighting at top tier, when you're fighting with the Germans, Japan, say, against all the helicopters, you've got no chance at all. And that will happen with naval as well, is you're going to end up with pretty much no chance at all, especially some of the older ships. You know, Colin and the Emden are both World War I era ships. You know, yes, they were retrofitted, but they weren't retrofitted for missile defense. You know, these ships, none of these cruisers are ready for a missile defensive use. They just don't have the capability on board. So if you add these exocets in, it's going to completely ruin what little gameplay there is, even though, in all honesty, you know, when you look at the battle times and stuff like that, generally, you know, top tiers in naval at the moment, you're waiting a pretty long time to get a battle, because there's only about 10 players at any one time playing the game, you know. So it is really problematic, and basically what I'm trying to say is I don't think they should be added. I think it's too... Maybe eventually, if we start getting modern ships, then yes, but it's not the time. It's nowhere near the time. It's, you know, we've got a few ships that are in that sort of modern era, but we have too many ships that aren't. And yes, the whole system of naval changed once missiles came in. You know, larger ships were becoming smaller. However, we would have things like missile cruisers and missile destroyers, which will completely annihilate everything. And, you know, where do you stop with that? It becomes... It's already unbalanced enough, and it's already broken enough. We don't need to break it anymore, we need to fix it. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Alright guys, I'm going to end the video here before I keep rambling on and ranting, but I hope you found it somewhat useful and interesting. As I said, naval at the moment is absolute... It's not good. It's not good, unfortunately. Naval is in a really bad spot currently, and I hope they pull it around. I hope they fix it, because currently it's not working. Naval is not working. You know, you have to wait maybe 5 to 10 minutes to get a match when you're playing cruisers, which is way too long. You know, when you've got this many players apparently online, you know, you don't have the battles for naval, and it spread the player base that was thinning even thinner, which is never a good idea. Alright guys, I will catch you next time. This is me, Carl Screwzilla, out. Bye bye.